Feel like making dreams come true. Oh, babe.
So hello, and we're having our first guest here at the Watchers TV house with on our new sequence, me, myself, and my watchers. This is Gabriel Benador from New York. So first of all, well, welcome, and could you tell us a little bit who you are?
Thank you, Marc-Andre. I am Gabriel Benador, and I was born in Geneva, so watches are something that I'm comfortable with, I grew up with, and I enjoyed always from a young age. I live in New York, run a family office, and in the last few years I've been very blessed to discover the world of independence, which has really sparked new passion and a new love for watchmaking and the people behind the watches as well.
So before diving into these watches of yours, can you relate to some objects that are dear for you?
Well, watches for one were something that were always dear to me in both an intellectual and an emotional way, but I also collect a bunch of other things. I collect custom knives that I think are also very craft intensive for the craftsman, and as well pens, because I think it's just there's some sort of poetic beauty to pens and writing and the art of putting pen to paper. And I also collect art and some random objects, as I'm sure you know, like the MBNF music machine too, which is also a beautifully emotional mix of metal, wood, and sound, and the mechanisms. That's basically it, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about pens, because indeed I often hear collectors that have this kind of affinity, special affinity to pens and watches. Seems to be like a nice combination between the two.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see pens also with watch brands who are putting out pens,
Yeah,
and it's a
that.
nice marriage between the two, I think.
Great. So now let's go into your watches. No specific order, just pick them as you want.
Okay, so for the random pieces from the large companies, we have here a GMT Batman. I was just attracted to this because of the colors, and I love the GMT dual time zone type of complication. I travel a lot, and it's very useful, but as well, this Serichrome bezel that they did was unbelievable, and the mix of colors just speaks to me, and it's Batman. I have a soft spot for Batman, so I just like the watch. I don't wear it very often, as much as I'd like to, but it has a bulletproof movement. Just the fit, feel, and finish is everything that you'd want from a Rolex and a big brand, just done right. So,
All right, and now we're gonna go into stranger territory.
yeah, well, we'll stick with the Rolex a little bit,
okay.
and this is one that I'm sure many
nice.
people are familiar with. It's Tudor Submariner Snowflake here that's got a little twist to it. And I like my watches with a little twist, as you'll see, even from the big brands. But it's a Marine Nationale, an MN 79. So it was issued in 1979 to the French Navy, and it served on a submarine for about 20 years, decommissioned in 1999. And I have the decom papers for it, which are something that people really try to get when they get them. And so I have them for this watch, as well as two wetsuits from the diver who owned it at the time of decommissioning.
And how did you get a hold of this one then?
Actually, interestingly enough, my friend who's a vintage dealer, I helped him out with accommodations for SIHH last year, and he took me out for a drink, and when we got back to New York, and he knew that I was after another vintage piece, and I kind of asked him, I wasn't really into the example that he had, because it had a later bracelet, and so I asked him, do you have anything else interesting, just out of intellectual curiosity? And he's like, yeah, I got something military. And I said, oh, military. Anything military is kind of cool in my book. And he showed me some great, very high quality pictures of this. And I said, wow, I've always wanted a Rolex Milsub 5517, 5513. And they're just inaccessible right now, and especially with the papers. But this one came with the whole package, and it was in great condition, great example. So I said, we can swing this, and I did it. And I couldn't be happier. I actually wear it quite often in the summer, and I think it's just a great piece in condition, and the accessories are fantastic. So, straying into another segment of my collection has been focused on Patek Philippe, particularly discontinued, and again with a little twist where possible. As with Patek, sometimes it's not possible. But I specifically tried to do all of the interesting sports models because they're known for their dressier, classical complications, and I think they do a sports watch almost like nobody else. So here we have the 3700 from 1979. This is the first series, and this is something that took me a long time to find because again it had cork box, outer box, papers, service papers, everything. And interestingly enough, the day I took possession of this watch was the day it was originally sold in 1979, so 37 years prior. So that was a nice little moment for me when I looked at the papers. And
looks really impeccable.
Yeah, this, again, something else that I was searching for in the 3700 was not just the full kit, but as well top condition, and I was lucky enough to find one that was new old stock. I'm the second owner of this, and very proud to have this one.
I can imagine.
So next we have also from the Nautilus line, we have the 5980. This one is the blue dial, which I think is the nicest combination, and here we have a Tiffany stamp on it, which is again a little twist. It's like the all that Rolex, Comex stuff, but because they continued this after Patek discontinued using the Geneva seal, Poinçon de Genève, this one actually has the Poinçon de Genève. I think they discontinued in August or thereabouts of 2009, so all the later models don't have it, so the two-tone, the rose gold models don't have it. So maybe rare, maybe not, I don't really know what the production numbers are, but interesting.
You like it?
Yes, I do. And then sticking with the Tiffany stamp, this is a 5164, an Aquanaut, a travel time. I think this is just a fantastic execution of the travel time GMT. It's, you can hide it, you can pop it out to adjust time zone without popping out the crown. You've got the day and night indicators for the two time zones and the date, which I think is very useful. And it's in a nice, elegant package. And to me, it's an interesting watch as well. So.
Nice.
And yeah, and I also have a double seal 3712, which I think is the interesting middle of these two complication-wise. So that closes that out. And then, of course, here is the great 5970 in white gold. This doesn't really have much of a twist to it, but the oxidation here, I wanted something that wasn't too of that motorcycle exhaust burn blue, something where it was even, and I was lucky to find one also. It was a new old stock condition with open papers, and I just think that this watch is just amazing. It's simply one of the most elegant watches. It wears smaller than its diameter, and it's, I don't want to call it perfect, but it's very good. Yeah. And it's, to me, the end of the big era for Patek. Afterwards, who knows what happened. It has the slow beat Le Mania movement, which I think is also poetry in motion. It's one of the last ébauche movements that they used, so that was a nice closure for them. And now let's get into the fun stuff. I'll start with a boring RM29 by Richard Mille. I like, there's a whole stigma and aura around Richard Mille, and there's a lot of opinions about Richard Mille. It's it's not a boring brand. Yeah, it's not a boring brand by any means.
No.
But one thing I will say is that he makes a case like no one else. This is just simply the most comfortable case that maybe ever exists, just in terms of shape. In any metal, it's comfortable, and it just hugs. Look at that, no lugs. I also love that it's in titanium, and as you'll see, I'm a big fan of titanium. This is the 29, so it has the big date versus the 10, which had the smaller date on the other side, and you get a little bit of that see-throughness, which I think is cool. And obviously the execution of everything is just very, very good. Next, we have here an HM3 Frog by MB&F, which this version is called the Chocolate Frog, which is titanium. It's titanium colored in the color of chocolate. And this is just fantastic. You've got the rotor that moves on the face of it. You've got these two orbs that tell the hour and the minute, which is nice because HM, or logical machine. And you've got, of course, these barrels here that are the time and the hour and the minute. And this is number 10 of 10. This was a version that they made for the 10th anniversary of Purist Pro. So
when you wear this watch, what kind of remarks do you get?
I get a mixture of funny remarks because people a lot of times don't really understand what it is. Get a couple of lewd remarks because of the shape of the orbs.
Oh, strange.
Yes, from my collector friends. But for those who know, it's they really appreciate this one. Even with the guys at MB&F themselves, this is one of their favorites. The HM3 is my favorite version, and this is one of my favorite versions, along with the Moon machine, that he did with Stepan Sarpaneva, which I always felt a little twinge of regret because I'm a lefty and I keep it on my watch on my right hand, and it's particularly faced for a righty. So but I could not be happier with this, and this of course has the date wheel with the indented date indicator there, which is also a nice touch. Keeping with MB&F, we have here an LM1, which is the version that they did for Dubai. So the differences here being the face here is a PVD green, which turns colors depending on the light from green, blue, purple, some mixture of them. You have the Eastern Arabic numbers and the MB&F on the left-hand dial, which normally on the normal version is on the right-hand side. The case is titanium. This is the first LM that was in titanium, which is why I went for it. And then, of course, they did the Silverstein in titanium. But the great thing here is that the three-dimensional power reserve is just incredible. And this huge balance wheel floating on top of the dials, which was also a first. So I like things that are first or innovative or creative. And of course, you look at the back and it's just amazing. You've got names printed on the back that one would dream of.
The one thing that I really like with the LM1 is that you really feel that it's alive. I mean, the idea of the balance wheel being kind of pulsating heart, that's really what you get here.
Yeah, yes, and here with this one, it's also a limited edition of 13, and I got my number in it, number 7. So that's just another detail that I like. And so keeping with the semi-pseudo classical, we have a Kari-Voutilainen Vant 8, which is a 3-hand watch, but here the dial execution is always a little bit unique and a little bit creative with Kari. You have 3 different patterns on this one. It's titanium case, and the reason I like this one beyond its sublime finishing is the balance wheel is the first time it was a Breguet overcoil and a Grossman curve put together, which is supposed to, in theory, help daily use and also with power delivery. So here, this balance wheel is also massive, and it's got a great lengthy bridge there, and that's just a beautiful execution of a creative classical watch. Now going into a little bit less classical, but still kind of classical, we have an FP Journe deadbeat tourbillon remontoir. This is the black label version, so it's a platinum case with a black dial, and there have been many versions of this watch over the years. This is my favorite execution of it because you have the addition of the dead seconds, as well as the remontoir on the back, which used to be visible through where now the seconds lay, and I just like the way it comes together with the dead seconds, that sound, 6-second tourbillon. And this is direct descendant of the first ever tourbillon put in the wristwatch. And it's just a great execution. It's a thin case, so even though it's platinum, it wears very, very well because it's close to the skin. And it's just a overall great.
Yeah, it's
great
very
execution.
elegant watch, I think.
Yeah. And then here we have an Urwerk UR202, which, I mean, if you know your Urwerk, it's they're in their own planet, telling time in a whole different way. These squares are actually satellites that are telling the time, and they rotate, if you can see here, as the minutes pass. So here you get 4, but here it says 8, and then all of a sudden, once you hit the 60, you've got it at 5. It's also a little bit classical because you have the moon phase here, and it's a nice detail that the needle that points to the hour track retracts and extends. And the cool part here is that you have a control panel for controlling the rotor winding, so you can let it wind freely, or you can stop it completely if you're doing something particularly active, or somewhere in the middle.
And this one, when you wear it also, what are kind of the reactions?
People usually think it's some sort of sci-fi trickery or something cool, you know, from some other world, because it looks nothing like traditional watch, and it looks a little bit like Darth Vader. It looks a little bit like I don't know what, but it's you know, again, it's the imagination that somebody had to get to this to imagine it and really deconstruct the way we normally look at a two-hand watch and say, you know, this is how we're going to tell time. And Urwerk's done a fantastic job of incorporating additional complications and other pieces with this system as well, and it's very, very, very good.
Nice.
And then here we have the big daddy. We have the Gabriel Force double tourbillon technique 30 degrees. We can go on and on about this one. Basically, this was their first invention, which was the double tourbillon, which is a 4-minute outer cage and a 30-second inner tourbillon at a 30-degree incline. And great thing that they did was they said, well, how are you going to know where in the 4-minute and the 60-second sequence is the tourbillon if we don't tell you? So they decided to put here 4 little arrows that indicate the 4 minutes of the outer tourbillon cage and the 60-second track right here, so you can track the minutes, and each minute is 1/4 of a rotation for the outer tourbillon cage and 1 full rotation for the inner tourbillon cage. Additionally, this has a 5-day power reserve with 2 coaxial barrels, and it has a running seconds there as well. One thing I will say about this watch is that it's something like I've never seen before, I'd never experienced, in that you get the depth and you get all that magic that you would normally get from the back of a movement, like along a double split, on the face of it. And they didn't try to miniaturize it. They left it open there so you can really enjoy that insane depth and field of vision that you get with that, and it's just incredible. When you look even closer, because this is a titanium DLC version, it's every detail is perfect. The engraving here is just flawless. The case is polished. The finishing on the back is all black, and it's every little detail here has been accounted for, from the use of sapphire for the time, as well as the sapphire for the 4 minutes and the 60 seconds, and all the matte red, and even the luminescence here is just perfect.
And could you go for, a classical Gabriel Force, meaning in a gold case, for instance?
I really do like some of their gold pieces. However, I just prefer the titanium, especially for a piece like this, because it's a large piece. The case diameter
that
is
is quite
47
large,
and a half, and it's about 17 and a half thick. So to me, I like the titanium because it almost embodies the essence of what independent watchmaking is, in that it's something out of the classical. It's not a classical metal. We don't see it in vintage pieces. Obviously, we don't see it. Very many large brands don't play with titanium too often, and the lightness of it is something that I really appreciate for something that's orologically heavy as well as physically heavy in other metals. And I think they're understanding that, because they're doing a lot of titanium pieces now with their other complicated watches.
And I see you have something quite special on your wrist there.
This is something I'm particularly proud of. This is an Angelus U20, which is a creation by Dr. Sébastien Cholmonté, who is also head of innovation at Arnold & Son. And this is a flying tourbillon, but this is a piece unique that he made for me. This is sapphire on top, and it's a carbon case. And if you can see here, the sapphire goes directly into the carbon without a traditional bezel around it like you would normally see on any other watch. It's extraordinarily light because of its use of sapphire and titanium and carbon. The components are almost all in titanium, and those that aren't are in steel. And in the back you can see the way it looks, which is also very, very elegant and handsome. And of course he has a little inscription, pour mon ami 00. It's extraordinary light. I mean, you have to feel just how light it is to understand, the use of the different materials there. And the fact that the sapphire is part of the main plate is very impressive. And even the buckle is, the construction is in multiple pieces. It was put together, and the case as well. And one cool fact is that here on the lugs, these squares in here, or these trapezoids, they actually come out. So if they need to be repolished, you don't have to try to get in there. They come out. So it's really been thought about, through and through. So, and for me, what he did differently was that the hands, I wanted something with a little bit of pop, because they're normally in silver color, and so he put red for the hands as well as red on the rehaute, which I think adds to a little bit of legibility as well as just a little uniqueness and pop. And the great thing is that because of the sapphire, you get the depth of the movement in something still considerably thin. And it's nice because when you're wearing it, you can take a look at it through the side of the sapphire, which is very, I've never seen that. I've never experienced that before, and it's a real treat to have.
And I know that it can be complicated for collectors to talk about a wish list, because you can go on and on and on and on. So let's kind of limit ourselves there. And what would be your 2-3 dream pieces?
That's a very, very, very difficult question.
Yeah, I hate when people ask me that.
Just going on things that I've seen this week that I would really love. It was the first time I played with the Gabriel Force Contient Perpetuel, which I think is just an absolutely astonishing piece of horology, and that's definitely something that I would love to have. I don't have a perpetual calendar from an independent maker yet, so that would be fantastic. In terms of the Voutilainen, the new Voutilainen with the minute track that changes, I think it's very clever and very cute. But I also finally explored Kazakhstan, and their Luna Nera is very impressive, and I actually had the privilege of getting the explanation about that from Vianney Halter, who designed it, that whole mechanism, and so that was a great treat. But I think it's a very, very, very special piece as well, and I think those are three.
Excellent. Well,
pieces
thank
I
you
want.
really for sharing all this with
My
us.
pleasure.
It's a nice collection. I'm looking forward meeting you in a couple of years. I'm sure there's going to be a little evolution in there. And thank you for dropping by.
Thank you, Marc-André.
Cool. See you soon.